Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you once again to continue to the conversation about the situation in Haiti. And today we have a very, very special guest to talk about the situation in Haiti. We have the pleasure today to have Mr. Keith Mines. Keith is the Director of Latin America at the Latin America program at the United States Institute for Peace. He's a career diplomat who worked at the State Department for many, many years and worked in many countries like Venezuela, Haiti, Colombia, Brazil, and the Middle East. He is also the author of Why Nation Building Matters, Political Consolidation, Building Securities Force, and Economic Development in Failed and Fragile States, which was published in 2020. Good afternoon, Mr. Mines. This is a pleasure to have you.
It's good to be here. Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.
I presented you as a career diplomat with more than almost 30 years experience. Is there anything you want to add for that?
No, that's it. I mean, I served around a lot of different places, and I was in a number of countries that were struggling through what I call political consolidation, or the coherence of a political system around a national vision. And I think that's the one theme that as I worked in a number of different countries, that started to resonate with me. And that was where I took the time to write a book about my experience in a number of different countries that were struggling with that, Haiti being one of them. And what were the lessons that we've learned about that? And how does one arrive at a place where a country can either reset after a civil war, or in some cases develop the democratic structures that have eluded it up until now. So that's a theme that I've been very passionate about and written about that from a lot of different perspectives. And then just a word about USIP. So the U.S. Institute of Peace is a publicly funded institute that was founded in 1984 by members of Congress that felt like we spend an awful lot of money on defense and not as much on peace building. So they wanted to have an institute that could do both the research and the analysis, but also the field work in different countries to try to understand better what are the rudiments of peace, how do you arrive at a peaceful solution, and then especially how do you sustain peace. We had a really good exhibit of war photographers who then went back to their countries where they were in covering a war, and went through the peace process and kind of their perspectives on what it takes to sustain peace once the peace accord has been signed in the case of a civil war, or in many cases where there's been just a political conflict when that has gotten to a new phase. And it was very interesting to think about the sustainment of peace. And that, I think, is a real key issue with Haiti, is how does one sustain a process once it begins? I think for the United States especially, that can be challenging. We tend to have a short attention span and tend to want to get to an election and then leave a country alone. So there's some things I think that we've learned as American peace builders as well. But anyway, that's the Institute. We have programs across the world. In Latin America, we're active in 8 countries, and try to do our part to surface different options based on our analysis, based on our field work, and to promote better ways of arriving at a peaceful political or a military solution when there's an active conflict. And every country is very different, but we're very seized right now with Haiti and trying to, again, surface some new ideas and new thinking and try to apply what we've worked on across the hemisphere and what I've worked on around the world to try to bring some light to a situation that's increasingly, I think, frustrating and bedeviling the international community as it looks for ways to be helpful.
You have very extensive experiences and knowledge about the situation in the region, in the Western. How do you understand the crisis in Haiti? What makes this crisis so particular compared to other countries you observe?
Well, there's a number of things that are unique. I mean, the first one, there's some things just historically that are unique about Haiti. One is its isolation, its relative isolation, and others have written a lot about this. But it's a country that is relatively isolated from the other communities in the hemisphere. And I think that's always been a bit of a challenge. It's a country that didn't go through, again, the kind of civil war that we had in Salvador, Guatemala. Colombia is still in the middle of a civil war, but has, reached a peace agreement with the FARC. So there hasn't been that kind of tangible, conflict that one can negotiate, and there's insurgents and they're convinced to give up their arms and so forth. It's rather just been a very long political transition. And the thing that you'll find in my book is that the attention span and the time needed to bring a country to a place of peaceful democratic resolution is just very long. And I think we shouldn't be frustrated by that. We should just accept it and move forward. I mean, the transition in Haiti really only started in the 90s. I got there for that tour in 1995, and so it was a year after the restoration of President Aristide. That was always going to be a decades-long process. And, so here we are 27 years later. That sounds like a long time. It's really not in the life of a nation. So that's one of the parts of it that I would just always point out, is that it's a long process. A lot of progress has been made, but there's still a long ways to go. Now, what I bring, I guess, as I look at other cases, there's still some similarities. I mean, a country, we work a lot with El Salvador, for example, and it's a country that is struggling to find its national vision. What is it that the people agree on? How do they cohere around a vision and then apply that vision through democratic structures? So there's always, I think, the same kinds of challenges or similar challenges in any country that's been in a conflict of any kind. Haiti's conflict, again, was less an insurgency or a civil war, and more a long transition from a dictatorship.
It's been more than a year since the Haitian president Jovenel Moïse was assassinated. The former U.S. Special Envoy Danforth, he resigned last year, almost a month or so after the president was assassinated. And among the reasons he gave was the fact that his recommendation with regard to Haiti have never been taken into account by the Biden administration. He recommended against supporting Prime Minister Ariel Henry, but he was basically nominated by the State Department, the core group via a tweet, as you might know very well. Why do you think the United States is mostly always on the wrong side of history when it's come to Haiti, from what we understand as Haitian?
Okay, that's a bold proposition that we're always on the wrong side. I would say that, look, over the last, again, 27 years, let's kind of just mark it that way, there have been ups and downs. There have been times when I think we've been on the right side of things. I think there's been times when there has not really been a right side, because there were so many things in play that were just always going to be difficult. I think so the last year, and it's, we have to mark that, we have to understand that in order to move forward. But I think the issue, as I read it at the time of the assassination, was that there was so many things in play, and there was so much that was murky about what had happened and who was involved. And I don't have those details, but I just know that looking at it, it was extremely complicated. I think there was an effort at the time to do kind of a temporary reset. And I think that was kind of the course of least resistance, was to support a prime minister who had, there was a quasi-constitutional way, if you will, of allowing that government to reset. And then I think and this is where I would differ from kind of the course that maybe is being proposed by many, but at that point, I think the issue was getting to an election. And this is a very American thing. Like, Americans tend to focus on elections. Europeans tend to focus more on socioeconomic issues. There's a third thing that I think none of us focus on enough, and that is building political consensus, which can be simply a long process. So I think the effort was just trying to get to an election. And that's not a misguided thing. It was wanting to have a legitimate government that was made as, through some sort of national consensus process. Elections are the normal way of doing that. So getting to that place where that government could then be supported on all the other all the other fronts that were needed. And I think, but that's that just hasn't quite worked out. And I think most are in agreement now that an election would really be sort of problematic. So we can get into this a little later, but our idea is more of a national dialogue that would reset the country politically and then allow for some of these other things. All options are difficult though.
Yeah, with regard to the election, so it's clear that election is not possible right now. More than half of the countries is controlled by like gang members, like next to the White House. I mean, by the White House, I mean Asian Palace. It's like only less than 1 mile. There are several like gang members controlling it. It's like election is not like possible. But until recently, the U.S., like the State Department, was pushing for election. There are several groups like organization in Haiti that they came together like under the Montana Accord to find something. It was not perfect. They have their own problems, but at least they have a consensus like large enough to at least to start solving the crisis. I didn't mean by this consensus, the crisis wasn't going to be solved like overnight, because it's a very complex situation in Haiti. But at least there were enough organizations from the civil society that came together. But as you know from your experience, nothing is possible in Haiti without the State Department, without the United States, and it's well known from everyone. Why do you think the government didn't support like the Montana Accord? Because they always encourage like a large consensus between the people, but this group, they came with something which could be improved, but was large enough. There were more than like 300 organizations between it. Why do you think until now, the State Department, they are reluctant to support the Montana group, which might be the best path to solve the problem?
Yeah, no, it's a very good question. And that I think goes to the heart of, again, is the challenge that we have now of trying to reset a political process that can function and that is representative of the Haitian people. To me, there's 4 things in play. The first is some kind of a process to reset the political groundwork or the rules of the game. The second, somewhere in there, is a larger process that would involve a national dialogue. The third is an election, and the fourth is constitutional reform. But the challenge is that the order of those is not quite clear. It's not there's not an easy way to order those. So if you can't really do constitutional reform until there's a body that has been elected by the people to do that. You can't really hold an election until, as you say, the gangs are persuaded somehow to hold back or brought under control. It's the rules of the game for reaching a political consensus is not clear, and then a national dialogue comes with its own set of challenges. So they're all challenging. They're not impossible, but it's a challenging sequencing that I think has been where some have struggled. So some have wanted just to jump ahead and do something, again, like a rapid election or something. But the consensus building part of it has really been difficult. I think I deal with the Montana group a lot. I have tremendous respect for them. I think they're a very unique organization that has definitely kind of put their mark on a new way of building consensus and of promoting, drawing civil society and different groups into the political process. So they're definitely, a very notable organization. I don't know the particulars of why that was not fully supported. I would guess that one of the issues is, it means supporting a new group to govern, because they would have been the ones that would have established an interim government. And that's a little bit problematic because, it's basically supporting a process that is extra constitutional, if you will, to have that interim period. On paper, it looks good. It looks like that would have been the easy way to do it. But I can certainly see where, diplomats and others would look at that and say, it's a little problematic to bring in another group to govern. And so I think the easier way and the cleaner way, if you will, was to support the prime minister and his government, as flawed as that might be. So none of the options are good. my own view is that, there's so much in play now with the Montana group, and they've done such good work, and they've got good proposals, good reach, that building on that with some kind of an accord, if you will, with the Henry government, and then broadening that to include more of civil society, better regional representation. I think there's a way to do that that would be maybe the formula that
Yeah,
blends.
but excuse me if I interrupt you. But Ariel Henry has more than a year, and it doesn't show he has the ability to at least not solving the problem. Haiti's problem is very complicated. Like someone, you cannot expect a prime minister to come just 1.5 years and then the problem is solved. But the basic situation now, the like gang violence is, you see all the diplomats, like the US, the United States, Canada, other countries, they close most of the part of like only essential members stay. So the situation keep getting worse with him, but that's not the problem. How the US, like, they support democracy. Ariel Henry has his name like cited for his alleged participation in the president assassination. It's not up to me, not up to you to know whether or not he participated. But from what our democracy is in the US, this justice system works. Like I've been living here for about 10 years. You accuse someone like for a crime that is so serious, they would not be able to run for the smallest office in the US until the situation is cleared. But is the prime minister. So how do you explain that? I'm not asking you to talk on behalf of the State Department from like your intellectual curiosity, what you understand. How do you understand that like the United States of America supports someone, the judge in charge, who was in charge to the investigation, said that he participated. We don't know yet. That's not how justice works, but yet the US still behind him. How do you understand this? I understand they want something like close to the Constitution, but you get someone who is like not only unpopular, but he's under investigation for a serious crime.
Yeah, but I think that goes to the larger issue that I raised, I alluded to earlier. I mean, the question now is, I think there's a lot of people in the international community that would like to be helpful, and they don't have anything to get behind. This is one of the critiques that I make of those that are active on Haiti internationally, is I think there needs to be some very clear proposals on the agenda. My own guess is that the continuation of support for the current government is again absence of other good options. So I think that when there are clear options, I think that moving forward will be easier. And I think until then, there's almost a sense of being stuck with the status quo. And I think that there's a real reluctance to go in and change something and again be blamed when something doesn't go right. This is another thing about that I think we need to think hard about in terms of the environment right now. I think many on the international community are just reluctant to get involved. They don't want to be blamed for something that goes wrong. And I think we do need to be also a little more clear-headed about the times when international assistance has been effective and has been helpful. So it's not just 27 years of everything going wrong. I think there's been some high points. I pointed to the second Preval administration. I was in Haiti for the transition from Aristide to Preval. It was rocky. It was a very challenging time, but there was certainly a lot of good work that was being done, and many of the institutions were starting to come together. The police training, judiciary, I can talk about that more in detail, but there was things that were happening in a positive way. And again, the second Preval administration, I wasn't there for that, but I was following it from another posting, and things were again starting to come together. There was it had been some really, really rocky transitions to the second Aristide and then back to Preval. But, it was something where there was certainly a lot of goodwill that was being applied. Then came the earthquake.
Do you have the impression that the U.S. government understand the crisis, fully understand crisis, what's going on in Haiti? I ask you that because I believe last week you had a guest, like the National Security Advisor for Latin America, Juan Gonzalez, who alleged that like the people who were on the street, like were paid by people who did not even live in Haiti. The comment did not sit very well in Haiti. We understand there may be some like hand behind the movement, but people are frustrated. You understand that Haiti has the minimum wage per hour per day is less than half of the minimum wage per hour in the US. Like not even compare. And then the gas price, like more than what it is in the US. Like there are a lot of people down the street. I don't condemn the violence. People who going down the street destroy people's things. It's not good. But we cannot ignore that people who are on the street, they are angered. They want things to change. It's not all of them you get paid to go down the street. How did you understand his comment?
So I'll be honest. It's not an issue that I follow closely. I was aware of the demonstrations and some of what caused that. I'm broadly aware of the subsidy policy on gas, which has been very complicated because it used to be tied in with Venezuela, which I also cover closely. So a very complicated issue. I wasn't aware of that issue, and I hadn't heard that before. So I'll just be honest. He knows, he's got a lot of inside information that I'm not privy to. I guess I would say that, true or not, it still pushes us back to that same place, which is the urgency of arriving at some kind of a political solution that resets the governing structure and allows for these kinds of decisions and to be made in transparency. So I think whatever the issue, and again, that's one that I wasn't really up to date. It kind of took me by surprise, frankly. It wasn't one that I had heard about in that way. But it again is just a reminder of the urgency of doing something. And that is where, so many of us that work on Haiti are, people kind of assume we're just going through another normal round. I don't think this is a normal round. I think we're actually in the worst crisis that Haiti has ever had. I don't think it's going to get better,
So has this situation right now, say with your extensive experiences in Haiti and the region, like the State Department calls you to ask you, Mr. Mines, tell us, what do you think we need to do today to start at least the process of solving the crisis? It's a crisis that has been going for a very long time, and it has some consequences in the region, in the United States, because whenever the situation gets worse, people are trying to desperately leave the country, like take the boats or go by Brazil, Chile, Mexico, or other country. We're going to talk about that after for the immigration part. But say that they ask you, what do we need to do today to solve the problem? What would be your proposition or your answer?
Yeah, that's fair. So I wrote an op-ed for The Hill last week or the week before that laid out kind of what I would suggest, and our last piece in the USIP website also kind of covered that. But I would say I always look at these things to try to structure my thinking in three baskets of issues. So one is economic and humanitarian, the second is security, and the third is governance and politics. So on the humanitarian side, and it's what's driving, I think, the attention that there is on Haiti. There is a humanitarian crisis that is unique, that everyone recognizes. And even the migration crisis, frankly, is at its heart a humanitarian crisis, just because of the inherent risk of trying to leave in a small boat. The mortality rate very high for migrants, and even if they make it to Mexico or whatever, and then have to make the passage up. So it all comes down to humanitarian impulse, and I think that's where a lot of support is. There's another piece of that, of course, which is the medium-term economic things that would need to reinforce a political settlement. But that's in its own place. The economic and humanitarian almost standalone. There just needs to be as much as possible. That's being impeded, though, as everything else, by the security situation and the control of the port by the gangs and the roads. And so there's not free movement of things, even when they are available. So the security piece is, I think, really the first thing that needs to be designed. What we've suggested is that for security, there's probably going to, and this is not popular, but I'll just say it because I don't think there's a way around it. I think given the power of the gangs right now, there's going to have to be some kind of an accommodation or an agreement made with them to get to their price for allowing a political process to transpire, to move forward. There's a lot of other pieces of that. The training and equipping that is going on is essential. There's got to be a Haitian police force and security force that is capable. I've worked on this on and off a number of times. The one thing that I would say is that I don't know that we collectively in Haiti and those that are trying to help ever quite got that right. There's a need for a kind of a cascading of security forces from the local police up to the national police, up to the heavier kinds of units. And I don't think the strategy has ever really been quite right. So there's work, I think, on strategy and on building that force and then sustaining it. The judiciary is always important. There's been a lot of work over the years on that. And then prisons as well. Prisons are often not paid attention to, but there's got to be a way to contain those that are violent and that are working against the government, et cetera. So security forces, judiciary, a lot of work that needs to be done there. But it all ties in very rapidly to the political side, and in politics, that needs to be really I think the heart of the next phase, with a close tie into security. And I think that on the political side, again, the challenge is designing a process that draws in as much Haitian participation, excuse me, that draws in as much Haitian participation as possible from the broadest range of actors. And that's the process that I think we're all trying to figure.
Mm-hmm. Do you think from the way the situation is right now, it is necessary to have a special international force for the UN, even if it is not the same way it was like in 2004 and 1994? Do you think there's a need for like outside security force in Haiti?
So there's definitely, I almost would say that would be the easiest way to do it, because it would bring in a force that could rapidly reestablish security. It's just not going to happen. And I think, there's debates about this that I think are not really even necessary, because I think we're all quite certain that given the current state of the world and those that would be interested or participate in something, I don't think it's really something that is realistic. So I don't tend to dwell on that, because I don't think it's a real option. So I think the options are more in the other two issues. Again, how to deal with the gangs in such a way that subdues them, and how to build that security force. So I would say again, an international security force, very, very unlikely. And again, not something that I think we need to spend too much time on, because unless things just get to a point of, where there is a total deterioration, and I don't think it'll get to that point. So then we're back to the political question and the political structure, which has to be tightly connected to this question of security and developing that. So they have to be very tightly aligned. But again, the national dialogue process is one that we're quite seized with. We've done a lot of work on this around the world. We have a very good report that was done last year on national dialogue processes around the world, in Africa, Latin America, and Asia, that points to some of these processes. And I think it's harder to do than just jumping ahead to an election in some ways, because it takes a lot of time to set up. It takes time and energy to run it. But I think there's a place there where that would galvanize the political process in a more compelling way than other options. So I would point to national dialogue as one way. On the international side, I think that while there's not an opening, nobody is going to intervene, I don't think. There is a need, I think, for some senior, statespersons, men or women that have good names that could come in and play a kind of a good offices role to try to help set that up. I think that's one thing that's lacking right now is just a visible kind of assistance for Haiti. And I know a lot of people have been involved at different places. I think they have done good work at different places. Some of them, the work then unraveled, and so they're maybe not the name that you would need. But there's some individuals that I think with the credibility and the skill, properly supported by a good staff, that could do some of this work to help stitch together a process.
When it comes to security, though, I think, my personal point of view, there's a lack of political willingness, like in Haiti. Say the gang, they are running like less than a miles from the Haitian Palace, White House.
Mm.
It's not even possible. And there is reports last year, uh, we lost five of the best Haitian force that we had
Mm.
less than a mile from the White House, like the Haitian Palace. I keep referring to the White House just for comparison for people who don't know. Like there's a lack of political willingness, like in Haiti and international too, because most of the firearms that they went to Haiti, that they come to like from the US to Canada, and it's not even possible for to get that many arms going in any other countries. The US has more control, like when it's come to other countries, like than Haiti. And Haiti, like it seems like the border is open when it's come to send firearms. Do you think also there's a need to, put more controls, like restrict how firearms are transported in Haiti, because that's a huge problem also.
Yeah, no, that I mean it definitely is. I guess on security in general, there's a whole list of things that would have to be worked on together, and that's one of them. That's one that I think we're all aware of, that there needs to be a better control of the weapons that are coming into Haiti, recognizing that now there's so many heavy weapons there already that any force is going to have to either negotiate or outgun and be able to contain the gangs that are active. So, but that the weapons is a very is one component of it. Again, I would say the most important is the structure and the capacity of the security forces and their ability to maintain law and order, to push back the gangs. And I think given the trajectory that things are taking, I think that's again only going to be done with a certain amount of dealing directly with the gangs. There's some very good research that's been done on that. Just to point to another paper that was done by the IFIT. They did something on negotiating with non-state actors last year that's very good. And again, I know it makes a lot of people uncomfortable there, and there's a good thing. There's a reason for that. They fear that making a deal with gangs, they've been politicized, and they've been shown that they can extract political benefits by being gangs and being in that mix. And there's some other precedents where that's gone badly. El Salvador most recently has gotten very complicated because of deals that have been made with gangs, and Hamas in the Middle East was another armed group that attained political power through the guns. So there's real risks to that. But I think at this point, I just don't see another good option. I think there's got to be some kind of an accord or negotiation that's done that would find the price point that they have to allow a political process to go forward, and then start to move some of the leaders out of that sphere and into something else. It's a long process, but it's one that, again, there's a lot of good experience that's been done. I will say, of all the cases I've seen, this is probably the most complicated. And in many ways, we just have to be honest about that. Haiti does raise complications on many of these issues that are almost without precedent. So, it's not a time for easy solutions. It's all going to be hard, but it's going to get harder next year than it is this year. So there's no point in waiting.
From an economic standpoint, do you think the US, so I don't want the interview to, show the impression that we are grieving about the United States. I am grateful. I'm glad to be. I love the US. I got my treatment, like I got the cancer stage 4B a couple of years ago. And then I don't think there's any other place in the world that I would be alive today. But we do understand, like, need to have, honest dialogue when it's come like the way Haiti has been treated. Like when we talk about the economy, we understand like there's an assistance like that is given constantly to Haiti, but it did not work. The situation getting worse. After the earthquake, there are like billions that was spent in Haiti, and nothing has been changed. Like people's life getting worse, and we feel like most of the money that went to Haiti, they come back to the US, like the consultation they were paying, other things. And there's also the corruption in Haiti. Like we don't always have the best people in power, like they're almost looking for their pockets than like for the people. But do you think there's a need to redefine the way like the US treat with us when it comes to other countries, Afghanistan, Ukraine, other countries, they give like billions. We don't have the same capacity as those countries. You don't expect like the US to give billions to Haiti with our economic capacity. But do you think from your experience, like in the region and in Haiti, there's a need to redefine how the US is helping Haiti economically, like give support that are more sustainable than just the assistance, like living today on a daily basis?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of different questions there let me comment on a number of those in different ways. So one of the things that I think is we always have to think about is the ability to absorb assistance or to not absorb, but to put assistance into use. And that has been a challenge for a long time in Haiti, that there hasn't been in the Haitian government a good process. Again, it's inconsistent. There have been times where it's gone really well, other times less well, but there's not a good place right now for the technical capacity to figure out what happens to the assistance. Now, one of the things working in all of our favor is this thing called the Global Fragility Act. So this was an act implemented by Congress a few years ago that is now kind of taking on new life, where the Congress just wanted the United States to be better at dealing with what they call state fragility for a country that has fragile institutions and that is, in the line of fire for climate change, if you will, as Haiti is. And there's a lot of the good work, even when it's going well, there's climate crises and things that are in the mix that nobody has control over. So there's the Global Fragility Act that mandates that two things that are really important, and we've written on this. One is that the country have a 10-year framework. So when I was there in the 90s, I mean, it was just amazing that every 6 months we had to re-up the mandate from the UN, and the US kind of went along in that cycle. So one cycle was only 4 months. It was some kind of crazy thing where we had to, go in and do it early. Anyway, so it's 4 to 6 months. Well, you can't plan that way. So the 10-year framework that is mandated in this Global Fragility Act, I think, is really important. And then the second part of the act is listening to Haitian voices, listening to local voices. And I think that's been missing. I think everyone would agree that's kind of been missing. But how do you channel those voices? This is the other part of it. There's a lot of loud voices in Haiti, as you know. And sometimes the loudest voices get the most attention. But how do you get down to a process where those voices are being really listened to? Again, I would point back to a national dialogue process, not just a one-time thing, but a process where there's a good way to channel voices. And I've worked on some of these in different parts of the world where, you try to get as close as you can to the natural process in that country and in that culture for collectively making decisions. In Haiti, one of the bright spots is the growth of civil society. Again, I would say if you go back to the 90s, it was coming out of a dictatorship that allowed no civil society of any kind. And I mean, you know how that was. There wasn't an allowance for any kind of participation in anything really by civil society. So Haitians have a very natural way of working together I think has yet to really been processed in a way that gives you the structure to do that. So it's a natural thing. On the one hand, I mean, the communities that I visited and that I am in touch with, they all have this interest in working together. There's a natural cohesion in society, but that hasn't channeled in the more bureaucratic way of how do you then take that and channel it in a positive direction. I remember one of the things that I experienced as we were working on for the church that I went to in Port-au-Prince, we had a service project, and so we were cleaning up the park, and I remember I chose one. Everyone was really active in a certain place, and I said, well, let me go find someplace else. So I went off like a good structured American, and I started working alone. As soon as I work alone, like I'd have 5 people who would come over and work with me. And I said, all right, they're going to work here. I'll go someplace else. And then someone else would come. The point was that, there was a natural collective. There was a natural desire to work together. And that, I think, is common across Haiti. Again, it's channeling that then in a political direction so that good decisions are being made and then they're being executed. And that's a long process. But again, starting from scratch, really in the 90s, it hasn't been that long, but it's still something that needs effort and needs to be nurtured. And again, the Montana group, I would say, is one of the great examples where that is happening, and other civil society groups that have really started to come alive. So a lot of positive things there.
So compared to, we're going to be done. It will be a last question for you, Mr. Mines. Compared to other countries you observe, do you think our problem is more complicated than any other place due to the nature of our leaders or the way the country is structured? What do you what is your assessment of compared to other countries like Venezuela, I know you work Colombia, other countries in the Middle East? What is the comparison can you make? How easy or difficult it is to deal, to solve a problem in those countries?
That's a great question. I would have to say Haiti is one of the most complicated. Yeah, I think it just any set of problems, I think, comes with a very deep and complicated array of actors and history, and some of the normal tools are not always available. So I think we should, we shouldn't throw up our hands and quit, but we should be honest about the scale of the challenge, and that there needs to be a constant focus. It needs to be done collegially, respectfully, realistically. But I've always been hopeful. And again, there's so many things on the positive side of the agenda, the simple energy of the people, again, the desire to work collectively. There's tremendous talent that just needs to be oriented. And I think if you go through, again, these three baskets of issues on the economy, a focus on jobs right now, to make sure there's employment, people are back and using their skills, but jobs really oriented to the medium-term economic development, looking at the coastal areas where there could be tourism, looking at refurbishing the light manufacturing sector. There needs to be that needs to be tied into the trade agreements that are done. Some are focusing on that. The security, again, very complicated, but tied tightly to the economic piece and the politics, but finding some kind of a formula where there could be a reset of the security dynamic that gives it back to the government, allows their forces and their people to manage the rest of it, and then some kind of a political process. So there is a way to do it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take patience and resources, and it's going to take something to jumpstart it, because as you say, things are kind of moving in the wrong direction with the withdrawal of international forces. It is going to take something to reset it. There's others that will be involved as well. I know there's frustration with the United Nations, with good reason for some of the things that have gone really badly there. But the United Nations does come with a certain set of resources that I think would be hard to replicate. There's a lot of interest also by the Organization of American States, less resources, but also an organization that can help channel things diplomatically. And of course, CARICOM, the neighborhood organization of diplomatic assistance. That's another one that I think can be mobilized. And again, there remains tremendous interest in the different countries that have been active in Haiti, and the diaspora, individuals like yourself. The fact that we're doing this interview now, I think, is really important. There's a tremendous strength and capacity in the Haitian diaspora that I think has not been fully tapped. Again, I think it's in part, there's not a clear agreement on what needs to be done, but I think there's certainly room for the diaspora to spend more time looking at how to be effective, both in keeping attention on the Haitian issue in the US government and across the United States among the American people, and then in channeling assistance in an effective way inside Haiti, so these issues can be worked.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mines. We could have spent a lot of time talking about the issue, and I'm glad you respond to our invitation very quickly. And I hope we will have other opportunity to talk to you again. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.